for me, maybe it's such a big challenge now to do sort of the impossible. Maybe that's my drive, to look at things and see the problems and the challenges and say, I'm sure I can do it. I can help you. I can fix it. I can overcome it.
Welcome to The Dark Zone, an adventure racing podcast. This is your host, Brian Gatens. In adventure racing lingo, a dark zone is a time when, due to darkness or safety, teams are paused on the course before continuing with the race. During that time, stories are exchanged, friendships are kindled, spirits are restored, and teams have a chance to prepare for the next challenge. We hope that you make good use of this dark zone. We're glad that you're here. Today we are joined by the Chief Executive Officer of the Adventure Racing World Series, Heidi Muller. Before she was appointed CEO, Heidi has a long history as an adventure racer, race director, and is a strong supporter of all things adventure racing. Today she speaks of her journey, the challenge of being a race director, how ARWS helps aspiring race directors, and what she thinks the future will hold for the sport. Enjoy today's episode, and thank you, Heidi, for joining the Dark Zone, an adventure racing podcast. And there appears to be, again, this groundswell of interest in adventure racing. The internet is definitely helping, right? The tracking, things like that. What are you finding nowadays in terms of when new people are finding the sport and they show up at one of your events, and if they say, we're here to do this, what do you like? What did you wish that the new racer knew prior to coming to the race? Like, if you could talk to them a month in advance and say, listen, you're going to come to an event and I want it to go well for you. In order for it to go well, focus on these things. Like, what would you encourage new racers to focus on when they come to one of your events?
There's quite a lot of things we try to communicate out to the new guys. I think there's definitely a difference between I don't know, we in our country, so, it's sort of race specific. We have very small races. We call it our 25K sort of sprint races, just really entry level to get people just with their families and kids in the sport, because it's a massive exposure event and to grow the sport in our country. But then we have the next level. We have a 60-kilometer race. And I know in America, you guys are speaking more about hours, 6 hours or 8 hours. We have then our 120K event, and that is sort of our premier stepping up event. From there, people jump to the big one, to 500. But I don't know. It definitely changed also in the human being. Since the years when we were racing to the people now, they definitely want more information. You always try to say to them, no, you get the map and you get the route and stuff I also know you guys say route. I've learned now by all my communication with all our members, the American people say route. Is that correct?
A word. What's the route? Yeah. What direction are we going? Route. You're spot on. You're speaking American very well.
I'm speaking American route, yeah. And I feel sometimes people, typical, we did today a recce for our 120K race coming up. And I just said to Stefan, we must remember actually when the people come to make them, especially a beginner, it's like coming from a trail running sort of environment, or you're already doing some mountain biking. But then you still think that the route is on a track. You don't understand that my checkpoints from here to there is not on a route, like on a route or a path. It is take the shortcut. Don't worry about it. And I always find they come and they stand and they're like, but where must we go now? There's no road. It's like simple little things like that really beginner people, and maybe that's in your country, but that is definitely in our country. It's such a big education to teach them, guys, you need water, you need food, you need, if we say recommended, we actually mean you have to have long pants on because you're going through the bushes. It's better to protect your skin. It's the heat. It's those basic things. It's your nutrition. There are so many things that they even come and sometimes do big other events. They're top athletes and they're still not, fully prepared to do an event. And that is just now on the physical side. Now they come, let's say it's a first team joining up with new team members. I think the team dynamics are a massive undertaking for most teams. Some of them make it to the end. Some of them don't even talk to each other at the end. That is always something we see at our events and races. And I normally
Let me ask you a
feel
question
that
about that, Heidi, if I can. Let me ask you about the team dynamics. That's always interesting because a lot of people arrive to the start line physically able to do the job. And they may not understand the map and the compass, but they figure that out. But the team dynamic very often, as you point out, is when things succeed or fall apart. What is it about? What have you seen in your own racing and in your race directing? Where does it fall down on the team dynamic side? What do you think? What mistake do those teams make?
Well, there's so many. I think in my racing years, I've learned myself because it's 4 members. When we were for 8 years, 6 to 8, was it 6 to 8? I can't even, like I told you, I can't remember. We raced with the same guys. And that worked quite well because we eventually figured, each other out and what worked and what's everybody's role. But where the problems come in when you race a once off with somebody and you don't really know. And you know what? The problem comes in when you're under stress. When you are tired, the navigator needs to focus, you make a massive, big mistake. So there's a few things I always say to people. Your goals needs to be on the same place. Are you going for a top 5 position? You want to do well? Or are you just coming and have fun? And the people who's just coming to have fun normally decide, doesn't matter what happens, we're going to have fun. Most of them normally survive these personal battles. Afterwards you come through, I don't like you, I don't like little things you do, we can work through it. But then I see normally these teams who are sort of chasing the top. You're not the top teams, like 1, 2, 3, you haven't raced many years together, but you are a good triathlete. You've done well in some other races. So you've got big dreams, but you're sort of not there yet. Your navigator is not as sharp. You haven't raced for a long time, or it's his first race. And the pressure on those teams, because you think you are good in another sport. And then you come into adventure racing, and now you have to deal with 3 other personalities under stress because you want to do well. You're hunting the front teams. You want to be there. You've got these dreams and ambitions. And then somebody hurts himself or, like I said, nutrition is failing. The biggest thing, of course, the navigator makes a mistake and it just throws you. It's somebody's personality just snaps. I also see a lot of teams just don't understand what the ultimate team sport means. Stefan will say in a team, if you cycle 50 or 100 meters in front of somebody else or in front of your team, that means you are too strong for your team. That means you have to go back and say, guys, can I push? Can I help? Who needs water? Can I carry your backpack? If you don't understand that, you mean you're going to cycle in front, you get irritable, you're pushing your navigator. Now everybody's catching up to you. You're going again, so you're pushing them instead of understanding that there is obviously a problem somewhere. You're not, and that disconnect. So I don't know. It's quite I love to do sessions about these things because for me it is, adventure racing brings it all out of us. It takes you to your knees every time. Mm-hmm. You think you are good and strong, but oh boy, the next morning the sun will rise and that might not be your day. And it makes you humble. I mean, it's the most amazing thing. Adventure racing for me is bringing all these things together where under stress, who you are, what happens to you, can you function? You're hungry, maybe you run out of food, things go wrong. It's just the most amazing dynamic is that interpersonal skills in a team. And yes, so yeah, I say to teams a lot of things before they come to a race, but mostly I say to women, ladies, those who are listening, I say if this is your first race and you are just trying it out, you have to survive on the first day. We get stronger, but we need time. Like we need a day to heat up, like to warm up, to get into this thing. And that first day, especially if it's a short, fast, not a hilly race, we're just sprinting, we're just hanging on. You can hardly breathe, you can hardly hear yourself. The man normally needs to push you. They have to take your backpack. And then after a day, you sort of, it starts gelling. And obviously after 3 days, 4 days, we equalize this whole picture completely. So
that's fascinating, by the way. That's a fascinating dynamic that occurs.
I love it.
And I've seen it time and time again, how the race really starts like on day 3. Like day 1 and 2, everyone is starting getting warmed up. And then by day 3, and then I would argue that once you get past day 3, that the female racers get stronger.
Yeah. Yes, it's wonderful. So I say to women, don't be afraid.
Yeah.
We've got it we have it all to be amazing adventure racers. We just need to survive the first day or 2. You have to trust in that. We are made this way. So it's wonderful. And also, but what I also say to the ladies normally, especially if you don't navigate, especially if you don't have a contribution in the navigation and in the decision making. The rule number 1, and that's for me, it's maybe not applicable to everybody, but for me, it wasn't always in our racing, is just keep my mouth shut. If you cannot say something positive.
By the way, that applies to male and female racers, right? Let's have some gender equity, right? Because I've been in many a race, Heidi, where I really should have just shut up, right? Exactly. Like I should have taken that advice, right? So if you're not giving to the team, just carry some gear and keep your mouth shut. Right? Exactly.
If you cannot contribute, if you cannot navigate,
just be quiet.
Be quiet. Don't say anything. Don't ask how far, like a child. Don't ask.
How much longer? How much longer?
I mean, I know my husband, and he sort of, I always say, educated me very well in this. In the beginning when I ask how much longer, whatever, he says to me, here's the map. Come, look at the map. Figure it out. I said, no, I'm too tired of hanging on the back. Okay, then you keep quiet.
I'll be back here being quiet.
Be quiet. So, you know what? Most conflicts anyway get sorted out by just relaxing, calm, keep quiet. But if you put fire on fire the whole time, especially when things go wrong, and you learn only these things with adventure racing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think
you learn all these lessons, and you talk to people who race a lot and who pay attention, and you learn. Like, I think a really good thing you brought out there for newer racers is, and for those people who migrate to adventure racing from other sports where they tell you what direction to go, right? Marathoning, triathlon. There's no need for really navigation in those races. I think that what really blows people's minds when they start racing is the fact that adventure racing is about error correction, not error avoidance. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to be on the wrong track. You're going to go in the wrong direction. You're going to go down the wrong reentrant. You then need to catch your breath, realize that you're wrong, and then work your way back to where you last know where you were, which is a really hard thing for people in the beginning because they're just not used to that as a dynamic. They're used to racing hard, and the only thing they have to rely upon is their physical capacity and their mental stamina, but it's a different kind of mental stamina.
Exactly. No, exactly. And if you're going to make mistakes, it's always how quickly can you realize it's a mistake and how quickly you can fix it. And if the team is connected, the team's been racing longer together, those things become faster. You realize it quicker and faster. But especially if you're a beginning team, you have to understand it's like business, it's like life, it's like a race director. You have to pay your dues. It's going to take you time. I mean, you cannot think it's going to go all well from the beginning, except if you are a good athlete and you join a very good team.
And you get to watch and to learn.
Straight.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You just follow, watch, or especially ladies. You find very good sports ladies out there, phenomenal ladies, and they get grabbed up by good teams. Yep. 3 good guys who's been racing for long, and they need a female member, and she can step into a good team very quicker, and without having too many dues, pay too many, it's just a little bit easier. But, for everybody who's just going out, I find it, if you have fun, you actually sometimes do so much better.
That's attitude. That's the idea of recognizing it's going to be a challenge along the way. And, as the New Zealanders like to say, sometimes fun isn't fun. Right. And so when you're wet and you're cold and maybe you're hungry and you're out in the bush and you're trying to figure it out, that's not fun you're at a carnival kind of fun, but it's fun you're with your team and you're looking at a map and you're doing your best. That's a different type of fun.
Mm-hmm. No. There's so many, and also then the dynamics again change when you go into night, but what I think is the most wonderful thing for me with adventure racing and the connection is like I've raced and suffered a lot for many years. Mm-hmm. I had many tears. I've put many hours in training. I felt it. I'm connected to it. When I'm at another stage of my life, it's very important for me. I still scout and recce our own routes because I have to feel it. I can't let Stefan or anybody else do the trekking leg, and I haven't done it because I need to know when something happens and you call me and you're in trouble. I need to understand exactly where you are and what I can tell you how to get yourself out of that position. And sometimes when you do a leg, you maybe plan something on a map. And when you do it, after a while you feel like this is enough now. It's hard enough. So I'm planning a race for a 24-hour race, or I'm planning a race for a 500K race. And I think for me it was, it's a blessing for me that I've raced so many years, because now when I stand on the other side, I still feel it.
You have a sense. You have a sense of how far people can travel and not travel.
Exactly.
Right.
I have a sense for it. And obviously, like I said, I did this with my husband. So it is the deep connection of Sims Racing, where he's more the map guy, the navigator guy. I'm more the feeling person. So, I feel good, or I feel we need to change the terrain now, or, like it is amazing. We trek through the night, I can still feel it. And for me, it's a very feeling, I'm really connected to it in that regard. And I think I definitely, now that I'm a race director, I still push that philosophy through, that you have to feel and you have to connect and you have to feel how it is to be a racer. Now, of course, we have family. I'm a mother with children. When we do our races now, I love all the families. I want a venue where the families can come. And when we were racing, families didn't come. Nobody even knew. Now we can choose venues where families can come and camp, or they can live in chalets, or they can have a wonderful time while you are racing, and they can be there at the finishing line. And I think it's so important, just to grow the sport, because the moment when you're just training and racing, but your wife and your family doesn't feel like they like the sport or they can't be there, then again, they won't support you to do what you love doing. So always when we have our races, and the wives and the husbands or the family and the grandparents are there with the children, I say to them, thank you, because it's you guys who makes it possible for these guys to race.
But that's the natural outgrowth of it. As adventure racing evolves as a sport, right? And the history goes back decades. But to your point earlier about the use of technology and the use of the internet and the website and the views, and the fact that race directors, there's now multiple generations of racers and race directors, right? At one point when the sport was new, there were no previous generations. Now there's generations. And so therefore, as the sport grows, and also in knowledge and notoriety, and it gets larger and bigger, it's definitely worth the race director's while to create an experience for the racer and for the family where possible, right? And so to your point, they can go to a chalet and they can go to a resort, and that could be built into the start and finish line.
I think, anyway, the racing, just look purely at the racing. And I think that is one of our, strengths, if I want to bring it back to Expedition Africa and our races, especially our big one, Expedition Africa 500K one, our premier event. For me, I've, you know what, when I was racing, let me say to you that's how it happened. When I was racing, I suffered so badly that the last day or so, all I was dreaming of, and I mean, everybody will confirm with me, I was just dreaming of that bed and that bath and that meal I'm going to have and the manicure and a facial. And I mean, that's all what I could think of. And then when I came to the finishing line, there was none of that. It was a campsite with a cold shower. And my agony just continued for a few more longer days. So what sort of was a great, like, over the years with Expedition Africa, I feel that it's the experience. You know what I mean? It is, maybe it's part of my personal sort of philosophy, striving for excellence and just be the best in what you can do, it's on a personal level. But I look at my event on everything and I say, when you land at that airport, I have to look after you. I have to pick you up. I have to put you somewhere. Make sure if you don't want to stay at my place, that you stay somewhere else. I think, like, what do I do with the gearboxes? What do I do with their bicycles now? How do they transport it? Where do they put it? The experience must be everything. Do you have a meal? Can you eat? Where do you get this? When you finished your race, do you have hot water, a bath? Do you have a feast? It's not only about the race. Adventure racing, it evolved. Like, it's not just you come and you do a race and you go home. Now it is everything with it. So yeah, it's grown so much, and I love it. I love that part of it, that I can feel those things has really made an impact. It is important for people, especially when you go to an international race. You've traveled, so you've trained, you've traveled. It costs you so much money. And those add-ons and extra special attention and extra care from somebody, like I said, I could dream about these things, where I say, okay, I land at the airport. Okay, what will I need now? And that is my sort of visualizing, where I go through every event and say, what needs to be done to make it great? It has grown so much.
It must be good for you too. I would assume too, we all want to be part of organizations that are growing, right? Nothing is probably more challenging as someone who's involved in an industry and organization that is on the decline. And it's safe to say that adventure racing is on the incline. It's on the way up, right? And what we're seeing, and a lot of the data points to that about people signing up for races and the growth of the different races that we're seeing around the world. And so for you, it has to be really, really gratifying to see the sport that you've invested your time and your effort into growing to where you're discussing experiences for families and greater reach on social media, things like that. As you kind of look in your crystal ball and you think a bit about the growth of the sport and the trends that you're seeing, you've touched on the family experience, you've touched on the technology growth and the social media output. What else do you see coming down the pike that speaks well to adventure racing? Are you seeing a growth in interest in South Africa? Are you seeing it? I know you're involved with the Adventure Racing World Series, ARWS, and you could speak to that a bit if you want. What are you seeing there in terms of the larger direction of the sport? Because there's no doubt that the sport's clearly trending in a very positive direction.
When I started organizing my first Expedition Africa, remember,
what year was that? How long ago was that?
2011.
Okay, 2011. Okay, so it's 11 years ago. Okay, 10 years ago.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So now this year's Lesotho, which was 2 years postponed. Right. Remember, it was supposed to be already. It's our 10th edition.
And where's that going to be? Just so for the listeners who want to fly over there and do it, where is it going to be?
Guys, go and Google Lesotho. It's incredible small country sort of in the middle of South Africa, but it's landlocked, South Africa around. It's completely on its own country, function on its own. It's a very interesting country. An interesting fact, it has snowed in Lesotho and every month of the year, right through. So we can have a week in Lesotho where we can have snow at our race and heat at the same time. So it's incredible. I mean, it's high mountains, it's
a beautiful
rural
country.
People, no fences, it's donkeys and horses. It's back in the olden days. No cars, only a few roads. It's Lesotho. I can go on forever. It's incredible. But what I want to say is when I started in 2011, at that point when we decided to have an expedition race, I didn't really think clearly. I have to be honest. I didn't think much of it. I didn't think where it will go. I actually had a 4-month-old baby, still breastfeeding at that point. No money. I mean, absolutely no money. Got 2 cars, rented 2 trailers.
Off you
crazy.
Go. And off you go. And all of a sudden you're a race director. Good luck.
There we go. At day 2, realized that I can't feed my child anymore because I have now a problem. I can't. Oh, no, it was crazy. I don't even want to go back to that. I mean, how we survived. Like I said, I can keep you busy forever. It went, it's a circle. It went, then we had good years, we had years, financial crisis came in, very few teams, no sponsorship, again, no money, borrowed money to organize these races. And you know what, if you don't understand that is the journey for most RDs around the world and just in a different setting, I don't think you are in tune with what's really happening there. And I think it's very important, that fact that our RDs, and now especially that I'm part of ARWS Series, a lot of my intention and time and investment goes into our RDs. We all have, just for me, the first thing is to get through is a language barrier. We have some RDs that speak other languages that can hardly speak English. I have to have meetings with translators. I have to connect. I have to try to find out what is your problems. How can I help you? But when I started it, I didn't know I'm going to be here 10 years later and still organizing races. It was never at that point, I have to be honest with you, it wasn't my dream. I didn't even think so far. And it just developed. And here I am still standing through the good times and the bad times. And now I had a family. I had to financially survive. My marriage had to go through all the stresses. And I'm still here after 10 years. Which, like I said, if I don't sit first and for all and say just thank you, that it's a blessing, I don't think I will be a good RD. So I have to have the feeling and sense of where I come from. And also remember that, you Stefan always say, my husband say, you're as good as your last race.
Very true.
And,
Yep.
Never to become too cocky or arrogant or think you are the best guy out there, because just like an adventure race, you're on the same field, are a race director than an adventure race. Things are going to go wrong, and you're not going to have always a perfect race. They're going to be having years where we had to do penalties and things that went wrong in our race, which was terrible, sad for me. There were times when I wanted to quit. We had to stand up so many times to say we're going to push this through and do it again. And why? So now it's 10 years, Lesotho. I got in last year then COVID came. I mean, how many of our directors are still suffering and still don't know if people are entering their races? And yes, it's definitely, I believe it's definitely on the rise again, and people want to go out and people want to go into that adventure bubble where you can actually get away from life. I create for you a week where you can actually just go and step into this other world where you can be in your own mind and get away from all your worries and stresses. I'm creating that environment for you. So I believe that is what people want. I deeply believe it. The numbers show to me it is there. So what I think is the future of us is, I think, first and foremost, we just need to go on this upward phase again where we need to look after our RDs, support them as much as they can to find themselves again financially and be in a place where they can organize great races. And then that's the first step. And then we're going on to the next step. How do you make races better? How do you make sure you just focus on your race? I always say to our team, I have the philosophy of, we call it the hashtag stronger together. As an adventure race is a team of 4 people. So why do I want to stand alone as an RD? I have, especially within ARWS Series, we are stronger together. We're out there. We have to understand we're supporting each other. Not everybody, you cannot do it by yourself.
So on that question, what do you think, working with a lot of RDs and listeners of the Dark Zone, there's aspiring RDs out there, right? People, they love racing, and they live in beautiful parts of the world. And they say, something, I live here and I love to put a race on here. In your work as a race director and with other race directors, what do you see as being the big challenges? Like, how do race directors accidentally self-sabotage themselves? What do they do to hurt their ability to put on a good race?
Oh, there's many things that they can do and go wrong. I think in the beginning it's hard. You think you've got a race, and always your first race are and not so difficult. It's in your backyard normally. So people normally go and say in a nice area, and you're organizing some in your backyard, you start organizing it, accidentally maybe step onto some other people's toes, don't check the calendar, don't communicate maybe with other, and I'm talking here in your own countries. This is all different places around the world. And I mean, I have that same thing to do in my own country. We have other race directors in South Africa, and it's very important to sort of hear, what are they doing? When is their races? Where are their races? I can't have the same race 2 weeks later than yours at the exact same area. So we need to understand that there needs to be some mutual respect. And if you come from the beginning and say, I'm not there to take somebody else out, I'm not there to take the sunshine away from you. Rather say, you know what, there's a place for all of us. So why don't we kind of work together? You have your race. I understand you love it. Maybe you want to make some more money of it. Maybe it's just a one-time event. And I think sometimes when you just start one race, you might just go into it and you don't think that there's actually other people involved, and maybe you hurt somebody in the process. So, people have different personalities, and I can't tell people also how they need to be. I'm speaking basically on behalf of how I am and how I, feel it's a better way of doing it. But I think that's one of the things. If you want to put a race up, fantastic. You have a wonderful area. There's a lot of mistakes race directors can do. And I'm talking typical mistakes where that can hurt the sport. If a race director tells you the race is 120 Ks and the race ends up 150 Ks. So, but I'm talking basic mistakes. If a race director...
That's a very common error. We had that happen here not too long ago in a race that we know about. It was advertised as a 24-hour race. And in reality, it was a 36-hour race. Like they had to make a mid-race decision to cut parts of the course out because the race leaders were going to be out there for over 30 hours. And so therefore they had to make adjustments.
Now, that brings me back to one mistake. How do you get it wrong so bad? Where did you get it wrong? Did you not do the route? Did you not do it? Did you not get your timings right? Then my next question is, if that is a problem, it means you didn't reach out to other more experienced people. Because I can tell you now, if you speak to any of our RDs and ARWS series and you give them their route, they will very quickly work it out for you and say, from the other side of the world, that something doesn't look right. Your timings are not right. And that is what we do. That is what I'm going to say. That is what we focus on. We have regional and smaller races, and we say to our guys, you haven't done a race, maybe it's your first time, second or third, but we sit with race directors with 15 plus years of experience. Give me your route book so that I can look at your route book. Give me your route so I can check your route for you. I have
your instructions. Let me see what you have
race
here.
Directors. Yes. Yeah. And that is how we make your races better. Now, for a guy who's on his own and he wants to start doing this, go back to the basics and check the things everybody does wrong. The information are there. Make sure your timings are right. Make sure your CP points are correct plotted. Make sure your map is correctly plotted. Don't make that a mistake.
And that's poison, by the way. I've done races where the race director and everybody will forgive, if there's 50 checkpoints and one is a bit off, nobody even blinks because that happens. But if you do a race and if a lot of checkpoints are missing or not there, that just sucks the energy out of the racers.
Exactly. And that's a years when we were racing. We didn't, sometimes at the races, we didn't even finish the race. You get to this Sunday, now you need to fly back to wherever you're staying. And we didn't even halfway through the course. We have to pull out because now we can't finish the route because our flight is delayed because we raced another 24 hours. So those mistakes, I don't think we can afford to make anymore. And I think it's very it puts harm and it's damage to our sport. Because you know what? In our small community, if you put a race up like that and I lose a potential client, because remember, you are my client. I mean, you're paying me money to come and you're paying me money to do my race. So I need to treat you like gold and I want you to come back. So there's a few things you need to do right to do that client. And there's just those fundamentals, you cannot make those mistakes again in today's life. Yes, everybody will forgive one mistake. You will overlook it. But unfortunately, in today's life, people are not so forgiving anymore.
There's social media, and then it metastasizes there, and then it lives forever. So 10 or 15 years ago, a significant error might have just been washed away over time, but now it kind of lives and it kind of hangs around a little bit.
And it's, it goes with you. But any advice I can give to a new RD who's, do your research, make sure maybe 2 or 3 buddies or somebody's doing the course with you. Make sure other people double check it. Ask other people to read your book 2, 3, 4 times through, and just be open to help. Maybe it's a man thing as well. I don't know. Maybe it comes so naturally for me to ask and speak, and say, I don't have a problem with that. Look at my route. Come, read. Read your own pieces over. You don't see your mistakes. Double check me, triple check me. Look at myself. What do you think I can make better? Consult, speak, communicate. And obviously pull off your first race as good as you can. I think, remember, there are more, as I said to you, your registrations need to be professional. Your welcoming needs to be professional. Your results needs to be professional. Your finishing line needs to be professional. You can go and draw yourself up a checklist or email. I'll send you a checklist for that matter. and make sure your event management, like a business, make it professional. I mean, there's, and I think that is what we need to strive to. If you compare us to all the other races, go and look at triathlon, look at big mountain biking events, go and look at any other big sporting events, and strive so that we can be at that same level with all the other checks. But yeah, so for the beginning guy, don't be afraid, go and do it. We want more RDs. We want people to have fun and create beautiful memories for people. But remember, by you creating memories, you take on a very big responsibility. Not only for people's lives, but also you can damage our niche sport greatly if you don't treat it with respect and understand that I might be upset with you if you messed up your race. And that means I potentially, for the next race, people don't want to do my race because they see adventure racing as a venture race. They just say, oh, nobody finished the race. We couldn't get to the finishing line. There wasn't even, they had to adjust the course. I'm never doing adventure race again. And what about all the good guys out there who actually do get it right? So anyway.
And to your point too, I think that's also what you're saying is that if somebody's out there and if they're an aspiring race director, you will find that other race directors are basically rooting for you. Like they want you to do well. Like we do not benefit from cannibalizing ourselves, right? To your point, are stronger together. And the sport, which is a niche sport, will only grow if the various race directors work alongside each other and communicate and talk to each other. And I'll tell you, I'm located on the East Coast of the United States, right? And there's a series of race directors that go up and down the East Coast and go a bit inland and towards Pennsylvania and that east side of America. And I've definitely seen over time, I've seen that there's a very, very high amount of collaboration between those race directors, not eating each other alive in terms of races one after a week. We're going back to the races, cross promotion, talking about each other. Like there's a vibrant community here, which I think, by the way, is not just here. I think it's any place regionally, is that there's going to be support for each other.
Yeah. No, I definitely think, listen, if you're not thinking that way, and you want to sort of take somebody else out or wishes them bad, like life is like that anyway. It's going to come back to you anyway. So
yeah, those people over time, they don't succeed, right? That only goes so far.
You know what? And also same here with me. I see a lot of new guys coming in and they want to do a race. I can very easily say, oh no, they don't know what they're going to do. They're going to mess it up fast. But I can sit back and say, you know what? He's starting his life. He's young. He wants to try it. Give him an opportunity to do it. As long as he's doing it great, I'm there for advice. And you know what? Rather grow the sport than damaging the sport. So if you're doing a race, speak to the other race directors and make it great together. Listen, I think in life, there's always sunshine for everybody. And I will always believe in that, especially in our sport. I know it's niche, but I mean, you ultimately have to support each other. That is ultimately my vision. If I want to bring it back to ARWS Series, The vision is truly that we are a team. We give mentorship for the new guys. The guys who's been in there forever is at a place in time in their lives where they've done it already. They've been through this whole journey of suffering as well, and as an RD, and the ups and downs, good races, bad races. And they're at a place where they can say, let's help the new guys. Let's get the new fresh blood in. Let's go to different countries where there hasn't been yet racing. Let's develop sport in countries where it's now for the first time happening. So there's so much potential.
Christina, now I know that you were involved in Expedition India. That was several years ago. And that race was successful and wild, and the stories alone are incredible. But I follow some of the social media groups now in Indy adventure racing. It's very clear that Expedition India acted as a positive motivator for a burgeoning scene in India for adventure racing. Is that what you're talking about? The fact that and that race was wild from the start, from the snow, right? You couldn't get the bus high enough in the mountain, correct? So you had to stop the bus and put the bikes together. Like, do I remember correctly?
It was beyond crazy. It was. Listen, you can have another chat with me just on India. It was really one of the craziest things we've done. I don't know. I was 8-9 times a year in India. You know what I found fascinated? I'm fascinated by India. I love India. Okay, Brian, let's go back. I love most things. Beautiful. I love people. I love traveling. I love adventure. In India, for me, maybe it's such a big challenge now to do sort of the impossible. Maybe that's my drive, to look at things and see the problems and the challenges and say, I'm sure I can do it. I can help you. I can fix it. I can overcome it. And it's such a big inner drive. And India, just for me as a woman, the cultural barriers I had to go over and through, and in the meetings, I mean, there were how many trips I was completely by myself. And I mean, I can write a book just on India. For women, that is an incredible story I have to tell one day, what happened in India. But it was so good for me to see that I could do something and pull this off, of course, with my husband. But as a woman, I could pull it through and get where we did. We achieved what we achieved. We, of course, had a lot of help. There were other parties involved as well. And if you look now in India, we have a young lady in India who is trying to continue Jita, and I'm mentoring her and helping her. And I'm so proud of her. And just as a woman, to stand up and to say she can do this. So the journey is much bigger than only putting on a race. And that's why I say, it's such a bigger picture. It's not just organizing adventure races. Adventure racing, it's changing people's lives. We all grow and develop. And I mean, look, after 10 years of racing, 10 years of race directing, and now in this new phase, I'm going with Expedition Africa and getting more involved with Adventure Racing World Series. You can't stop developing. You can't stop learning. You can't stop making changes.
It's very, very clear that from the ARWS perspective and the races that are being put on, that ARWS is trying very, very hard to recognize the privilege of racing in these countries that don't necessarily host races. And as a result, they want to feel connected to the people and to the culture and to the landscape. You saw that in, it was a Reunion Island. They had that when that's where the championship was.
Yeah.
The pre-race integration with the local communities. You saw that in Spain recently with the World Championships. Like, can you speak a bit about that trend in adventure racing where we don't want to fly in, do a race, run by the indigenous people, get back in our planes and fly back home? It feels like there's a lot of cross-cultural connection that's taking place now inside of adventure racing and ARWS, but also across the sport.
I think it's crucial. I don't know. I mean, we will know in years to come, but and that starts from my Expedition Africa. You come to Africa. Are you just coming to do a race in Africa and go out? Or to actually come to experience the heartbeat of Africa? Can I bring to you more in this race that you go home with a deeper sense of what happened there? So I'm taking you to India. And India, I walked through the streets with a flag parade and we drummed the drums and we danced on the stage with the local artists. Do you want to feel that? Do you want to feel it? We did our closing function, and I was sitting and thinking, okay, it's our closing function. You know, we had finishing at a hotel. And I arrived at the hotel 10 o'clock at night. And we had our finishing arch or our starter arch, which was at the start, it didn't arrive. It got missing in translation between 500 kilometers on the truck. It disappeared. I had no finishing arch. Okay. Now, I can't even track where I'm going to get it. Now, my top teams are coming in the next, 5-6 hours. I went in the hotel and I said, the manager, and I said to him, you guys had some wedding day. Tell me, if you had anything, what can we do? Like, o'clock at night and put up this arch for me with a draping. It looked like I think when the front teams came in and when the rest of the team came in, I was standing 1 o'clock at night with this team and draping a finishing line arch, looking like a wedding, an Indian wedding.
The wedding planner. The adventure race planner.
Adventure race planner. And came in and I love, go and look at my finishing photos. Just that little touch. It's my finishing photos. It's there. It's more. It's not just you come in and there's 2 flags next to you. Now, the finishing food, I gave you Indian food. I gave you a feast. Indian food. What is the culture giving you? We made our finishing night. We said to everybody, you have to dress, your attire needs to be something Indian. All our teams went to the local market and go and have a look at our photos. All the women dressed up in saris and the men even dressed up. It was incredible. So the same I do in Africa. You want to experience, and that's what I think you want to experience. And if I communicate with all my people, that is what they tell me. We want to go and you give you more. Why? A lot of these things doesn't cost extra money, but you experience the culture. When I speak now to my RDs in the ARWS series group, I speak to Natalie of Canada and I say, Natalie, keep it authentic. Keep it. Give me Canada. Give me America. Give me wherever you are. Let's focus on our own identity. So immediately when this happens is you are the French race. You are the Sweden race. Make sure your trophy, your culture, bring it in. So we diversify ourselves, that we all have a feeling. Because if you're an adventure racer and you have the money, a lot of people don't want to go back every year to the same race. You want to go and experience and see the whole world. But now that week is giving you so much more. And I think that's where the integration come in from, maybe the culture, the food, maybe the decor. What I do in Lesotho, for instance, it's a ski resort in the middle of Africa. So, we're going to have the authentic ski resort feeling. I'm going to bring in the African hats. We have, the drumming and the singing and the dances when welcoming you when you get out of your bus. And it's a whole experience. So when you go home, when you afterwards digest, you take some time. You have
process it out. Yep.
And maybe you take a week or two. Sometimes you go into deep, low level, and then you need to really realize, what have I done? What have I done? And how can you tell to people what have you done? It's like impossible. But I need to give you that feeling in your heart. And then I know that as an RD, I'm on the right track. I'm on the right path.
As all good RDs, they live their lives always thinking about the next race and the race they want to do. And you're planning the 500 kilometer race not far away from now. Is there a spot, is there a location that you've been looking at on the map for years that you would love to put a race together? By the way, I should ask, how many spots have you found on the map? Not is there one, but how many do you have? Because all race directors that I know, like I have very good friends who are race directors. We have a course that's kind of planned out, not far from us in New York State. That would be an amazing place to put on a race. It's hard though to get the permissions and the people and the maps and the landowners. So but if you could wave a magic wand, where would you love to bring a race to? An expedition level race?
Oh, okay. I'm going to give you all my dreams away now. Share with you all my dreams. It's all far away from me. It's very hard. It's going to be very hard with my family and my children. Maybe that is, it's so hard. It's so hard to get the government and the permissions. But I have a few. So Mauritius. I don't know if you followed our race on Rodrigues, a small island,
yes,
which was incredible.
I had friends who did it. They loved it. Loved it.
I'm happy about that. I would love to do that, but on a bigger scale. And Mauritius is a bigger island, and I can do there the same kind of thing, which I think will be incredible. Namibia, it's definitely, I'm born in Namibia. So it's where I come from. And
Is that the Skeleton Coast?
Yes. On the left, if you look at the map, on the left of South Africa. I would definitely want to go back to India. I feel I'm not done yet with India. It's incredible. It's an adventure racing paradise. It's just so difficult. It is. I cannot tell you how difficult it is. Maybe God prepared me for 10 years or 8-9 years in Africa to be able to cope with India. It is hard in Africa, politics, culture, a lot of stuff over and above to get a route and maps. I think I'm looking at all these difficult countries to organize races. I think I'm drawn to that. I'm drawn to that impossible kind of destinations. And I don't know. I think those are the races. I would love Morocco, Egypt. I'm drawn to Oman. I'm drawn to those destinations. Turkey. Let's see where life takes us. Brian, let's see if I can find race directors.
Your perspective and the way that you see the sport helps a lot too, because as I said before, many of the listeners of the Dark Zone are people who are coming into the sport and they're learning about the sport and they're growing in their base of it. And your perspective and your 10-year history of it and the races that you've done around the world speaks to that and speaks to it. And I appreciate your time today. Before we finish up here, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you thought I was going to ask about? Anything that you're wondering about that you want to share with the world?
Oh, Brian, there's so many things. I don't know. I think, adventure racing has been very good to me. It's changed my life. And I always say to people, try it, do it. It will make a better person of you. And if you failed the first time, continue, do it again. And that same message for race directors. It is so hard to be in such a competitive world. A race director, you put up your race. I mean, you don't even know if people are going to enter. You don't even know if you're going to make money. You do a race, you don't get the next year people. Continue, have faith in your product. Read about it, study it, look at what can you do better. And also understand it's not always possible for people to support you. Let's say, for instance, Brian wants to come to my race in Africa. You can't. It's maybe COVID, life, money, where you are. So don't always take it personal that you're not a good race director. It's just sometimes the timing and where you are. You need things to fall in place. I think overall in life, and I mean, that is just my own philosophy, people need to be more empathetic. People have to more empathy with each other. People need to give each other a little bit more of a break. I don't know, maybe because I come from Africa and we have so much sadness and things around us here and life is hard. Just be a little bit more, I don't know, give each other a little bit of sunshine. Everybody, I don't know. I don't think people intentionally always try to do things bad or wrong. Or as a race director, it's not your intention. My intention is just to do incredible races. But sometimes I can't help things. I can't help if your bike fell off the car and something happened. You know what I mean? I mean, your boat breaks in the first rapid,
Things happen. Things happen.
Things happen. And then also be more patient with each other, racing together. Give each other a bit of a break. help each other.
That must just kill you. Like when you're in a as the RD, and I think it's safe to say that when the race starts, you look at all the races as your children, right? That's the way you kind of look at them. Like you're now here with me, and you're going to go and you're going to do this thing. I think to your point you're making is that nothing must bother you more than when you see 4 people show up to a race and they just have a tough time with each other, and you could feel the tension, and you feel that they're just sort of they're mad at each other, and that must be rough. That's rough for anybody. I've been there as a racer and as a teammate. I've caused that, and I felt it, and I've been a victim of it. So I hear what you're saying.
You feel it again, most probably.
and the race ends, and you have a therapy session, and you move on. But to your point, I guess that's one thing. I guess it's safe to say that you personally and Kinetic and Air is that you're rooting for everybody. You're rooting for the teams to do well. You're rooting for the RDs. You want them to succeed. You want to see that happen to them. Because to your point, there's a lot of challenges in the world, and you want them to be not as challenged, but to enjoy themselves.
Yes, like I said, I mean, I speak on a daily basis. I'm full-time on calls. That's what I do. I full-time speak to people from around the world, try to see how can I help your event? How can I make it better? What is your challenges? I speak constantly and identifying with people sitting on another side of the world with a new set of rules, a new set of politics. And you need to understand it. You need to connect with somebody in South America, and you need to connect with somebody in America. And we're all different cultures. So for artists around the world, I know it's very difficult, and the intention is just to do great things. And more than that, the same with teams. Teams want to race, you don't always have the money. So there are a lot of challenges. So yeah, for me, it is race your heart out. If it falls apart, don't despair, try it again, try a new combination, try maybe somebody else's race. And in that way, if everybody's just trying to do their best for the sport and everybody's got that ultimate, always ask yourself the question, what is the best for adventure race? Not what is the best for you, what is the best for me, what is the best for the sport? And if that is your drive behind everything you ask and everything you do, then I know in my heart you're doing the right thing for adventure racing. Am I making all the decisions, or are we us together making the decisions? Are we a team, or are we united, or are we dividers? So, and that comes from each country and every country. So, yeah, I love adventure racing deeply. Yeah, as I told you, it's a love affair. It's it's my whole life. I can never say to you, I went into the right or wrong direction. I know it made me a better person as a racer, better mother. It makes me a better, wife. I have all these dreams to be great at everything. God willing, I'm saved a few more years, and I can organize a few more incredible races. Then what more did I ever wanted? If I can touch you in one of my races, if I can touch your heart or your soul in some way or other, if you can hike in one of my races at night and you can see the stars, then I think I've done it right. So if all the artists can have those ambitions, then I'm happy.
Thank you, Heidi, for your time. All of us at the Dark Zone enjoy bringing adventure racing into your life, and thank you, listeners, for choosing to spend your time with us. If you've enjoyed this episode, please pay a visit to your podcast streaming platform of choice and leave us a review. That is the best way to spread the word. Also, always feel free to reach out to me, Brian, at ardarkzone.com. Your feedback and guest suggestions are always welcome. Thank you, listeners, for joining us at the Dark Zone. Have fun out there.